When Sundar Pichai joined Google back in 2004, the company was really just one thing, a search company. That was it. But Pichai saw something else. He didn't just see a search box. He saw this massive, sprawling empire that was built on a foundation that was, well, dangerously fragile. So this isn't just his life story. We're going to do a deep dive into the strategic playbook of a quiet product manager who, piece by piece, remade Google in his own image. And it all started in the most unlikely of places.
So back in 2004, Pichai's very first job was to lead the Google toolbar. You know, that little browser plugin? It sounds like a pretty minor role, right? Maybe even a backwater assignment. But as this points out, it was actually the perfect spot to be. It was a listening post. From there, he had a front-row seat to Google's single biggest weakness, a vulnerability that honestly threatened the entire company.
And this was the fundamental problem he saw. Google didn't actually own the path to its own users. Its search engine, the very lifeblood of the company, ran inside browsers made by its biggest rivals. We're talking mainly about Microsoft's Internet Explorer. Think about it. Google was basically a tenant, and their landlord could kick them out at any time.
And this threat was, well, it was existential. Microsoft controlled the dominant browser, Internet Explorer, and with just the flick of a switch, they could change the default search engine to their own, cutting off that fire hose of queries and revenue that fueled all of Google. And this wasn't just some abstract theory. Then, in 2006, the what if became, oh, this is happening. Microsoft did exactly what Pichai had been warning everyone about, and that one move proved he was right all along. It gave him all the ammunition he needed to push for a pretty radical idea. Google had to build its own browser. Now you gotta understand, this was met with huge resistance inside Google. Even the CEO, Eric Schmidt, thought it was just way too expensive, a total distraction. But Pichai, he kept pushing. So here's the crucial thing to understand about Chrome. It wasn't born out of a desire to go on the attack. Pichai sold it as an essential defensive play. It wasn't about conquering new territory. It was about securing their homeland, protecting that core search business from the whims of a competitor.
Which brings us to the billion-dollar question. In 2008, Internet Explorer wasn't just a browser. It was an absolute behemoth. It controlled 2/3 of the entire market. It came bundled with every single Windows PC. So how on earth do you even begin to compete with that?
Now, what I find so fascinating about this, when you lay it all out, is how they used an asymmetric strategy. Pichai's team knew they couldn't fight Microsoft on its own terms, so they didn't. Instead, they took Google's unique strengths and aimed them right at IE's biggest weaknesses. So while IE relied on that Windows bundle, Google weaponized its own homepage. Where IE was just a standalone product, Chrome was woven deep into the Google ecosystem. And while IE's tech was getting old and slow, Chrome was engineered from the ground up for pure speed.
And this breaks down that three-front war they waged perfectly. First up, distribution. They just put a simple download Chrome link right on the Google homepage, instantly creating a massive free distribution channel that reached millions. Second, the ecosystem. YouTube would suggest Chrome for a better viewing experience. Gmail would warn you about issues on IE. It basically became essential if you were a heavy Google user. And third, performance. They built Chrome to be blazingly fast and made speed its #1 selling point.
So an incredible success of Chrome did a lot more than just save Google's business. It totally cemented Pichai's reputation as a master strategist. The playbook he ran, find a vulnerability, build a platform to control it, then integrate it deeply into the ecosystem, that became the blueprint for his entire career at Google.
Let's just take a look at this timeline for a second. I mean, look at this climb. From the toolbar in '04 to launching Chrome in '08 to running all of Android by 2013 and then all Google products just a year later. And by 2015, he's the CEO. Every single step up was a reward for knocking the last one out of the park, and it earned him the complete trust of Google's founders.
When he took over Android in 2013, he was suddenly in charge of Google's two kind of competing operating systems. A lot of people expected him to just mash them together, but he was more pragmatic than that. He understood that they served different markets, so he managed them as separate but complementary platforms. His role really shifted there from being a product visionary to being this kind of diplomatic ecosystem manager. But his biggest strategic move? That was still to come. As CEO, Pichai saw the whole digital landscape was about to get completely scrambled again, so he made a bet that would redefine the entire company. He stood up and said Google was no longer a mobile-first company, it was now an AI-first company. And he argued this pivot was even more profound than the shift to the web itself.
So,
What does AI first actually mean? Well, it was a fundamental change to Google's mission. For 20 years, the whole goal was to organize the world's information, right? To basically create the perfect library card catalog. Pichai's new vision was for Google to actually read all the books in that library, to understand and reason with that information, and in doing so, transform every single product from a simple tool into an intelligent assistant. And look, this wasn't just some fancy slogan. It required a huge organizational shakeup. He took Google's two legendary and, let's be honest, sometimes rival AI labs, DeepMind and Google Brain, and he forced them to merge into one unit. This was a critical, almost wartime consolidation. With competitors like OpenAI moving as one single entity, Google's internal silos had become a real liability. This merger was a clear signal to everyone that Google was now a single, unified army in the big AI race.
And this is where that unified AI strategy is headed. It's something called agentic AI. The best way to think about it is this. For years, AI could help you find a recipe online. Agentic AI is designed to check what's in your fridge, order the ingredients you're missing, and then preheat the oven for you. It's the evolution from a search engine that finds things to a do engine that actually gets things done.
But leading this massive transformation has put Pichai smack in the middle of three huge, conflicting pressures. He's not just navigating a tech shift anymore, he's trying to solve a complex trilemma that really defines his leadership today.
Okay, so the first pressure point is this global regulatory crackdown. And this table, it just gives you a little taste of the scale. We're talking multi-billion-dollar fines in Europe for abusing the dominance of search and Android, all the way to this landmark DOJ case in the US that's trying to break up the very ecosystem that Pichai so carefully built.
Which brings us to the core conflict, what you could call the innovator's trilemma. Think about this balancing act. Pichai has to move at lightning speed to win the AI race against incredibly fierce competitors. At the exact same time, he has this profound ethical responsibility for this powerful tech. And he has to do all of that while regulators all over the world are trying to slow him down. These three forces are just constantly pulling in opposite directions.
And this slide, I think, just captures the central paradox of his leadership perfectly. On one side, you've got this grand, world-changing vision where he's comparing AI to the discovery of fire. But on the other side, you have the messy reality. You've got massive employee walkouts over ethics, embarrassing product failures like the Gemini image generator, and a constant drumbeat of antitrust lawsuits.
And that leaves us with this final, crucial question. Sundar Pichai proved he was a master strategist at solving the big platform problems of the 2000s. He secured Google's dominance in the era of the web and mobile. But this AI war, it's a fundamentally different kind of battle. And the real question for his legacy is whether the defensive, methodical playbook that got him to the top is the right one to win the future.